that's all.
Okay.
That's an old one.
All right, first off, the April 2025 minutes.
So moved.
Is there any discussion on that? What's that? Okay. Is there a second?
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Prospect Farm, one of the things that just came up in the interim between putting the agenda out was that Mike said that the gate had not been closed. And
Yeah,
there was tire ruts.
Yeah, actually, I got an email from Alan afterwards. Silas had been out there and he had closed the gate, but there were a series of ruts when we went into the season, particularly at the second bridge. And I don't know whether Mike is talking about on the town property or on the Forest Service property.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But anyways, the gate is closed now.
Okay.
And the problem is they were skiing right up, and as soon as they stopped grooming, people tried to drive.
Whose gate is it?
The Forest Service's
See the
gate.
Forest Service gate,
Okay.
but it's ungated up until the Forest Service land, so if it was past the gate, then it was actually on Forest Service land, it was not on town land, because there is no gate to prevent you from getting up to the second parking lot. That's the reason I asked the question. I suspect it was on Forest Service land.
From Mike's description, it sounded like it was past the parking area to the log landing just before the bridge over Bog Brook.
But the only gate that the Ski Touring Foundation can close is the one when it enters onto Forest Service land. There is no gate until you get there.
Right.
So the minute that snow melts, people can drive on it up to the gate. There is no gate where the winter parking is,
Right.
which is why you can drive all the way up to the first parking lot and the second parking lot. So that would actually be a town issue.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You know, the town should,
Close it like Dundee Road.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
say, okay, it'll be closed for a while until things firm up, and then it doesn't cost as much to make it right.
I guess for it to be posted closed, does it need to have a gate? Or, I mean, I guess for,
No, a sign keeps the honest people honest.
sure, I guess that question answered itself. Would that be where it would become, if there were to be a gate there, would it just be there at Valentine's? Because you'd still need to maintain.
Because Valentine
access.
goes in and he can always have the right to access, just as
Right.
Camp Gout has the right to access.
Yep.
So if there's somebody driving into Camp Gout or to Valentine's that caused the ruts, they have the right to access on the Class 6.
I guess we can view the damage. I don't know if.
Yeah, I don't know that it's all that serious. I mean, a lot of these roads that, you know, people try to drive in and sometimes if it's still wet, you can drive and squish right back out.
Well, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
But it would be good to know where Mike is talking about the damage before we get all wound up.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It certainly sounded like it was mostly on the Forest Service.
And there was a bunch there that the Forest Service never really fixed going into the winter, which is on their road from their erosion.
Right. And where they pulled that culvert out. Did they fix that?
Which one is that?
There was a culvert at right where the old gate used to be that had left a big
I
trench.
think they temporarily fixed that, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well,
And in fact, they must have because they were skiing over it.
okay.
The other gate that the ski touring has is, but I'm not sure this is what he's talking about, is if you're going up to the Quail and so forth on that Class 6, because that is a town gate.
No, he's talking about,
Right.
it's out the Bog Brook
Yeah.
Trail and
That's why I think it's on.
just before the junction with the Wildcat River Trail.
Then that's on Forest Service
Yeah.
land.
Okay. Any other Prospect Farm items? I haven't had a chance to look at the parking area yet, so that was the only other issue from last meeting that we needed to kind of maintain or check up on how the parking lot.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it, but in the fall, it was still in good shape. This is the new one that we built.
Yeah, I think probably this week would be a good time to get up there and just make sure to look at those few spots where the knotweed has been coming up and to pull those if it's,
My guess is that was buried when Gary fixed that, but we can check it.
I think it was far enough back,
Yeah,
but if it was buried, it's probably good to make sure that it's
Oh, I
not
agree.
broken up and spread around out into the,
I usually check that spot and I go up there fairly frequently.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be my only item to stay on top of. All right. Jackson Falls.
I have, I just learned this week. I feel a little guilty, but the very top of Jackson Falls is a narrow sliver of land that actually, along Valley Cross Road from Carter Notch Road to the bridge, is actually owned by the Jackson Ski Touring Foundation. It was owned by CHP, and when they turned that land over to the Jackson Ski Touring Foundation, that tiny sliver also went to the Jackson Ski Touring Foundation. In fact, when they went to build the bridge, which was before the Ski Touring Foundation took ownership of the to CPH's land, they had to go to CPH and get permission for the construction of the bridge. But here's the sliver that, and they had to get a deeded access to be able to do it. So I will bring it up with the Jackson board and ask them what they want to do with it. But,
So they own right along the road?
no, they own, yeah, that is correct, they own this sliver here.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Do you think it's still there after they put the road in? I mean, they widened the road, I think.
it's that sliver right there.
Right, so our outhouse would be,
I believe the
Right
outhouse is
there.
probably,
On their property.
I don't, it's,
It's a sliver, yeah.
that's the map that's in the deeds.
Mm.
And see, it was probably a parcel that Badger owned on the other side, because you see the lines
Mm-hmm.
coming all the way across, way back here.
Mm-hmm.
well, when I talked to, like, yeah, that's interesting, because there's also probably, there's another sliver on the other side.
Well, there's more than a sliver on the other side, and that is owned by,
The tennis club.
yes,
The tennis club owns
Yeah.
the other side?
yes, and I think, and the rumor I have is the tennis club is considering selling it to the owners of Christmas Farm Inn.
Or, I'm sorry, tennis club owns further down. Above is where the Christmas farm, because they had a water
That is correct,
intake there.
correct, correct.
And
So they're gonna
Christmas
sell-
farm is the current owners.
Yes, you're correct.
So Christmas Farm owns across from the tennis courts, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
No,
This,
I thought there was an easement on this, Upper Saco Valley.
the easement on Upper Saco Valley, that's the Kendall property that went to the Jackson Ski Touring Foundation. And that includes actually where the fire pond is, but the town has an easement on the fire pond.
Mhm.
And that easement was in place with the Kendalls before the Kendalls turned it over.
So then the part along the road, you're saying that's Jackson Tennis Club?
No, this part here, on the
Right.
other side is the tennis club. That's where the tennis
Right.
club is.
But
And
this part over here, not here.
I don't, this is the tennis club
Yeah.
Right.
on
And
this side.
Christmas Farm
Christmas Farm.
on the
yeah.
uphill.
Christmas Farm owns that?
Yep. There's an old relic of a pump house there.
Yeah, but you said that the tennis club wanted to sell something to Christmas Farm?
There was a rumor that I heard that there was some transaction, but I shouldn't have said that because I don't really know the
Okay.
details yet.
Yeah, so,
Dick, as you can see, that sliver is probably from the Badger property that was on the other side of Carter Notch Road.
Oh, I see, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that line goes right down to it.
so does that impact any of our parking plans or just,
well, we put parking there, yes, we did. That was where the handicap
Right.
parking is, so, I mean, if the town had to go and get an easement for the bridge, anything you were gonna do in that area would actually be on ski touring, so you'd have to.
Maybe it's an opportunity to move the porta potty down to where the other.
I don't think the
parking lot is.
porta, my guess is the porta potty may be outside of that.
But that's where you need the parking for, it's for the porta potty.
No, we had it actually right on the roadside.
I know, but wasn't
Yeah.
that, so if there'd be a handicap space there to access the porta potty?
Yeah, and
That's
I
what
don't,
it
I
was
don't know
for.
what the distance are between that and the town. The town's right of way on Valley Cross is 33 feet across. I looked that up.
Hmm.
Well, that's including the road,
That's all, okay.
so it's probably 6 or 8 feet on each side of the road.
but it would impact access across from Valley Cross down if we were to keep that handicap parking spot where we.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay,
I mean, we have to, I'm not even sure.
so there's a pile of rocks right there right now,
Yeah.
so. Yeah, so there's a pile of rocks there.
But if we're doing anything on somebody else's property, we have to get permission. Just as the bridge had to.
Okay.
Of which I don't think it'd be very difficult to get permission, but that's,
Were you able to get pricing or on
It's the,
sod?
it's the same that it was
Okay.
before, it's 700, per 100 square feet, I think.
Well, I think we should probably just go ahead and get that ordered.
Okay, but I have to have a date for it to be delivered, unless you just want me to order it and pay for it and say we'll get back to you.
I mean, I think now that we have road bands off and I think as soon as they can get it here, we can just spend an afternoon.
Okay, so I'll tell them as soon as they can get it there. So, how many do we wanna get?
Well, if we're gonna be held to, did I send you the amounts? I think I did.
Yes. So I think we have enough for 100 square foot. Because part of it's materials, I didn't know if we wanted to add some money from the trust fund or anything like that, to make up for 2.
So if we were to, I'm sorry, how many square feet for that? 100?
It's a 10 by 10.
So 200 would probably fill in that section from where we ended the planting on the upper side down to that larger pine. Just kind of fill in that upper shoulder,
Yeah.
I think.
We'd also need that special landscaping fabric, and we're gonna need, I was looking at it the other day, we're gonna need a lot of soil to fill in what's been lost. Because I'm talking about from the edge that's closest to the river,
Mm-hmm.
that's all been hollowed out, you know, all
Right.
the roots and everything. I think I
Right.
wanna fill that in.
So I wanna, so on the closer to the road side,
Mhm.
on that, because that's not going to require as much fill material.
Well, closer to the road, I didn't think there was any loss there. Cause I'm thinking of the plot that's closest to the river, and it has the path
Yep.
going through between the two parcels. Is there an area there that you're concerned about?
I guess I was more concerned about just because it's that whole area.
Mm.
And so until we get a better plan of how to treat the whole area,
Mhm.
which will eventually be treated versus we need to spend the FEMA funds before August.
Okay.
And I just didn't want to leave that money hanging
Right.
because it's going to require a lot more extensive work beyond what the FEMA money is allocated.
So are you talking about restoring the area that's closest to the river, that's been hollowed out with the special fabric, or are you talking about another side?
Well, we can either go into repair or, so where the fern test plot was,
Mhm.
I think that's an easy spot to
Mhm.
fill in.
Yep, we could do that.
And,
That would be a good spot. And Ken had identified a good spot that was more of a hollow, so if you go through the path, you know, like you're going
Talking
down.
in the area that really eroded deeply, right?
Mhm.
Right down where the old picnic table
Yeah.
was that got damaged,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was kind of a little bit of a hollow, and if you put the, you know, that in there, that would, I would think, slow things down, maybe.
Right. So on the downriver side of the first big island that we've been building
Mhm.
out, like if we stayed more towards the path there and out of this like the river scour channel,
Right, mhm.
I think that would be
That's the area that Ken had identified.
Yeah.
So it would be more of an island, not joining the part that we've already done. It's the downriver. It's kind of like where the old picnic table
Mhm.
was. And then the area up where the Ferns site was, that would be a good spot.
yeah. So I think those two are two small areas that we can focus on because that where you and I worked last year and brought that ring all the way around. That's where we're going to require all that additional fill material. And
Right. So we're not gonna do that this time around.
I think that'll probably be captured in whatever the plan
Okay.
that the engineer prepares, just because that's going to need,
Okay,
thinking about that being in the river channel versus just being
right.
along the pathway.
So do you want me to order 2 of the, because we've got enough for one, $700 portion. I don't know if we've got enough for 2, unless we add some money in there from the trust fund.
Yeah, the other recommendation I would make is we've talked about just getting some iron pole stakes that would have some roping. Because right now we just have that old
Yeah.
flagging out there that looks
We
junky.
definitely need something.
And actually, when I was helping with the Kennet track meet, they have some that are about this high, has a nice little loop in it, and they use it at the end of like the discus throw and the javelin throw to keep people up from.
Plastic, iron, what are they?
No, they're metal. They just come up and have a nice little curlicue, and they just string the rope out.
Perfect. So where do they get those from?
I don't know, I'll check it.
Okay.
Are those like those golf course ones that
I can't remember the one you're talking about, but as I said, about this tall, they have a nice little loop, and they just string.
And if the dogs go through, fine, but people won't.
But yeah, if we're gonna put that vegetation in, we definitely wanna
That's a really
put some
good idea.
barriers up.
Yeah.
And that's quick, easy, and it looks good.
Yeah,
Um,
then you need something, because people just keep,
And if we have another flood,
yeah.
the water should go through, but if we lose them,
Yeah.
it's not expensive. You try to put something expensive fencing,
No.
you're just gonna lose it.
And these folks are here to volunteer for cleanup at the falls. So if you have any date that we can settle on, they would love to hear it.
Not to interrupt what you're talking about.
But would you like to help planting?
They want to actually help.
Yes, that's what I'm
Yes.
saying.
Whatever you
Yeah.
need, yeah.
Because we have to install some native sod, blueberry sod,
Okay,
down at the falls, and many hands makes it much easier.
right here for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
And we also get wood chips donated, which you may have seen we spread
Yes.
on the
Yeah,
trails.
yes.
And speaking of wood chips, I had Emerald Tree was in cutting some trees on my lot and chipping. And they say they're always looking, and I think Brian may have used them in the past to get us a load, but
And who is that?
Emerald.
Okay.
Is it Sean Laurie?
Yeah, we'll be doing some clearing also, so. should-
But we need a refreshing of chips on those trails as well.
So we might just need your contact information, because if I contact the sod provider, you know, they'll let me know when they can deliver. And then you can't leave stuff out there for too long because it gets dry. And I gotta get the materials to go underneath it.
Yeah, so just, we can get your contact info and I'll give you, it'll probably be a couple of days heads up. Or I'll also probably send something out in the e-news, so.
Mm-hmm,
That'd be great, thank you.
of course.
Um, Yeah, so not a date. I'll find about those golf course, because that sounds like.
They may be the same thing, and I'll check with where Kenneth got those as well.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I guess let's just keep on moving forward with that. We also have some money in there for paying for labor. And I don't know if we can loop like delivery fee into that or anything, but it wasn't enough. It seemed like it was enough for a couple of hours of someone to be paid, but I think if we can just get this initial section done.
So we'll get two?
A lot of time in those budgets, you're allowed to move up to like 10% out of one category into another. I don't know whether we're being held to
I don't,
each line item or whether it's government.
I would prefer to not poke that bear, but,
Yeah.
And how much money is there for the materials? Because now we're doing two areas, so.
It is 783 for plant material, 350 for soil amendments, and they have 455 for landscape labor. But I believe that when we had submitted that, we submitted all labor as being volunteer labor, and that was going to be the town's offset.
So the town would get that money?
How does that work? We have to spend the money and then get reimbursed for it?
The town has already had the funds obligated, so Julie has the money. We just need to tell them when we spent it.
That's safer.
Yeah,
If it's a match requirement, I don't know what was required in it, but if it's a match requirement, then it's our labor. There's a rate that they use, it's like $32 an hour or whatever. But there's no money that moves, it's just you're demonstrating that you've provided that labor. If that's how it was put in, I don't know how it was put in.
Is there any need for a tractor with a bucket? There's not much area to move around.
I think it was really easy to move everything from the road with wheelbarrows.
Okay.
And with sheets,
Well, actually, we moved it with sheets, and then
plastic sheets.
Bob came down,
With the Bobcat.
the
yeah.
Bobcat.
Mini
Moving
Bobcat.
that sod was much easier with the Bobcat,
It was a mini Bobcat.
yeah,
Mm.
and he was very good with it, yeah.
Yeah. But those would just be the 2 pallets, so I think,
Just many hands. Many sheets. It doesn't have to go far.
It's
Yeah.
downhill.
Yeah.
I
Go.
feel like I had one more thing on this, but I don't think so. Grades, is there any other Jackson Falls items?
Oh, I was thinking that where they put the, guardrails so far out along the road, towards Carter Notch, I think we should just eliminate the trail that goes from Valley Cross along, it comes into where the post and rail fence is. Because otherwise people are going to have to climb over the fence, over the guardrail.
I would agree, and the place where the entry would be is where from the handicap parking to the porta potty. Because that will bring you down into the trail system.
Do you think that, because they had taken some of those fence posts out,
Do we know when they're gonna finish?
I don't.
And how can they put the guardrails so far out? I mean, they're
I'm-
so far up Valley Cross.
I'm sure that's some engineering standard, so.
Yeah, or it's like they're a highway. Yeah. But,
It does direct the traffic
all right.
around.
Yeah.
But are we going to need to extend that fence back up to where the guardrail is, just to make sure, 'cause if people are coming
Oh,
over
I
that
see what
fence,
you mean.
and then where the old cedar fence was, it blocked people from going down that steep embankment?
Could be. I've been
Let's
noticing-
wait till they're finished and out of there.
Okay.
I've been noticing that people have been blocking off, they've been blocking off the main, where the handicap parking is in the middle? If you go down in there and look, you'll see that the trail that we wanted to have open, where there was a cement post in the
Mhm.
ground, has now been blocked off. And now they're using trails to the left, the little ones, and they're opening them up and they're getting a lot of traffic. So it's kind of the opposite of what we were trying to do. So somebody's
I'll have to
closing
go
them up,
look.
but they're closing up the wrong one.
By just like piling brush?
Piling up a bunch of, branches and stuff like that. I'm like,
Okay.
it's just the opposite.
I'll go and look at that. Gray's Inn. Mike said that he had spoke with Ellen at Ski Touring about cutting a new view shed on the Mystery House loop, but nothing final, so we would stay posted on that. So I guess whenever that happens, we can kind of schedule around cleaning up the old foundations for the Mystery House, and I guess keeping an eye on the poison ivy. Or do you know if Ski Touring has any plans to do more mowing there this year?
The mowing that's done there as well as during the summer, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ellen had.
No, the mowing on the wave, et cetera, is all done by volunteer help.
Okay.
And then they do the major mowing in the fall as they get ready for the ski season on all of their trails, but that's different than during the summer. But all the mowing and keeping that walking trail on the wave, et cetera, is all done by volunteer help. Thank you, John Higgins.
Okay. Community garden?
Well, we're supposed to have the presentation on the 15th to the Pequawket. The irrigation line's been cut in 2 places now, because the first one was done when we did a test pit. The second one was when they removed the maple tree. So our line was just too close to that little maple tree, so it got busted.
Okay.
So So right now, we're running a hose from the library to the community garden, and everybody knows we're doing that. And Gary removed the ball valve last winter, but I spoke with Jim, who's the road agent, and he knows where the ball valve is, so he's gonna come down and try and rehook it back up. I had to get another hose, because he had to get a hose from the 100-foot hose that I had, so they're long enough to come up to where the ball valve is in the ground. But of course, you look at the end of the hose and you look at the end of the ball valve, and I don't know how Jim's gonna do that, but
Okay.
we'll see how it goes. But at least we'll have water. I'm not sure when they're gonna work on the leach field. No idea.
It should be towards the beginning of construction.
Mm,
I would think they'd want to get that in.
yeah. I didn't think it would take that long. So it might be a matter of us like putting the hose away and bring it back out and putting it back away and putting it back out, that sort of thing. So, just had to buy a lot of hoses this year.
Okay.
They'll probably be in there with some pretty heavy equipment if they're putting the leach field there, yeah.
Yeah, probably safe to hold off on.
Well, Jim decided that they would fix the irrigation line once the construction is done. So he said
Right.
use hoses for now, and we'll just have to mark them really well.
Okay. Wildcat River. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Yes, great, thank you.
They're leaving just right over the door, that really spicy too, so.
Oh.
I wanted to work on cleanup, not enforcement. We
Um,
got an enforcement guy here.
Yeah, that's what we did here.
Well, I received a letter from Penny Porath, who she'd spoken to Brian last fall after the work was done, and she had kind of a laundry list of
After what work was done?
the dredging on the pond, on the Whitney's fire pond, and also on other work that had occurred at Black Mountain, which was slightly out of, I think, our purview, but also one of the issues that she brought up was intent to cut notice and timber tax, and when that happens, that goes through how does that go through the town office, or is that done at the state level?
No, it goes through the town office here.
Okay, so if they find someone who has gone over the minimum cordage, who is responsible for reporting, or,
We had a town forester
okay,
who would oversee that, but it would have to come from the selectmen to initiate the investigation.
okay.
Do you remember though, if it's a cutting for commercial to sell, then you're liable for the timber tax. If you are cutting just on your property and not selling, then there is no timber tax, is that correct?
Right, up to 10 cords per year for your own use.
And if you're clearing, like I'm having some stuff cleared on my land now I got trees near my house that just for insurance purposes I want away. And I'm gonna have some cleared because they've grown up and covering my solar and that sort of stuff. But I'm not obligated, or any landowner is obligated.
I don't believe you'd have any.
And I don't know whether Penny is bringing this up relative to Black Mountain, but if Black Mountain did some trail clearing and they're just taking the trees down and not using it, then I don't think that they're obligated to be covered under a timber tax, and we don't want to get into that mess.
Yeah,
If they were cutting for and selling the timber, then they're obligated to pay the timber tax, and that's to the selectmen, not to us. I just wanna make sure we're not getting dragged into something that is not under our purview.
Yeah, so I on that, the only thing I responded to her about was specifically fire pond, which is still slightly out of the Conservation Commission's interest, but. since-
Only if they needed a wetland permit, and they would have to come to us.
So then that gets to, in my further research, which in 2013, Whitney's Inn and Black Mountain received a letter of deficiency from NHDES, basically outlining everything that they had done that was not allowed, which was everything, and it was a far smaller scope than what had already occurred, like recently. And the last line of the letter of deficiency was, all future work that occurs on this will require a wetlands permit.
And if that's the case, then it would, the report would go to the state, not to us, because the state issues wetland permits, we don't.
We get them just as for our information.
Yeah.
Right.
And we can send in our opinion if we find that there's a problem.
So this is there's not a problem per se, but in the town involving itself in allowing this work to happen under the RSA that gives the town an exemption to maintain fire ponds. That's where they're saying we don't need to have a permit, but the work has already occurred. When it occurred previously, it said that they needed that, so it wasn't an assertion that the town needed, even though in their permit that they filed after the fact.
To the state?
Yes, so they initially got in trouble in 2013. It stretched out into 2016 when they applied.
Okay, yeah.
They applied for a permit to cover the work that they had already done.
In 2013, okay, yeah.
Um,
And the state okayed that?
I can't. I've hit the dead end of what I can find on the public records.
Okay.
And I think when Burr was here last time and I kind of talked to him, it said it seemed like the governor had gotten involved at that point and said it was I don't know. I don't know how it was resolved in 2016.
Those are not uncommon things where you get your fingers slapped, you go fix something, and it may not report it back. I remember Tom Perkins had done something on the ski trail way back. He got his fingers slapped because he'd done the work before he had the permit. And it was before I was even on the board. And then we got ready to do something. The state came back and said, you have one of these hanging out. You cleaned it up and then moved ahead.
Right. So I'm just, this week, so I kind of passed along all of this information to the selectman's office. They informed me that because part of the work is that the work is not finished, it needs to be reseeded. There's a bunch of soil that needs to be stabilized.
Yeah, you can drive by and see that, yeah.
Yeah, so the work is not done. So that was part of the question is, well, is there a plan to finish anything? So I was told that the fire department is going to be up this week, finishing everything and doing slope stabilization. And that the building inspector will be there to inspect, and that the town engineer will be there to inspect. But if the town,
I think that's up to legal counsel to determine, not for,
We can give them the heads up. That's
Yeah.
about all we can do is say, hey, pay attention here. It's being, it's being abused. In other words, the idea that it's a fire pond, but, oh, we're gonna do it for snowmaking, there's a problem there.
But the fire chief approved it, that's.
That's one of the problems, was that they got to listen to him because it was convenient to their needs, and, you know, it was just, it was incorrect.
Right. So,
But grassing and all that sort of stuff, they weren't gonna be able to do that until springtime, which is now.
right. So it was just I think my point at the time was just the permit lets us know that you have a timeline and a standard that is acceptable of work that you're going to do, so that we can know that it's going to happen and that there's someone to be held accountable at some point to do the work. Because is the town responsible for doing this work? Or?
Well, that's what I question, is the fire department now gonna clean it up?
Right.
Which means the town has to pay to clean it up, unless the volunteers from the fire department.
Or Black could offer to pay to clean it up.
Right, well, they should,
Or
I mean,
not,
I guess
not pay to clean it up, just finish the work that they contracted.
Yeah. And they couldn't finish that until now, because
Right.
that was all done just before, past the growing season.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all those things just,
I don't think,
I don't think that there's anything wrong that's been done. I just want things to be done in the manner where the state can't come back and say, this is all incorrect and now the town is liable for something because someone didn't.
right,
but the town would be liable then because of a decision that the fire chief made, not a decision that we made. Because the fire chief took, if I understand it correctly, the fire chief took the RSA to call that a fire pond, which allowed him some exemptions. And he gave an okay, because it was a benefit to both
Yeah.
the snowmaking as well as to the fire department.
And the exemption covers maintenance. It doesn't cover, it's very explicit. You can't expand the footprint.
right.
And the footprint.
They changed the channel, I mean, they
Yeah.
did a number of things for their own convenience to get a larger volume of water getting into the pond.
I don't think that I think what they did,
They did.
they did, okay.
They increased the culvert that runs, they widened the channel that takes off a Great Brook where they've sandbagged. So they sandbagged in
Okay,
the channel
okay.
of the river
Yeah, yeah,
to
okay.
divert
I'm
flow.
with you, yeah.
And then they replaced the culvert that runs under the access road. So they upsized that culvert,
Gotcha, yeah.
which is what they got in trouble for last time, was installing a culvert. And then there was some other. So it was just one of those things that, I mean,
I think, you know, a citizen like Penny brings this issue to us. It's a question, and I mean, others may differ from me, and I'm just trying to interpret where we are, but if DES held them up back in 16 and what they wrote, and the fire chief has used a different law to allow further changes, then it's up to legal counsel and the town to defend the fire chief's decision. If they elect to do that. And if not, then Whitney's and Black Mountain Ski Area are obligated to deal with cleaning up with DES because DES issues the wetland permit.
Whitney's, I don't know about, because what is there, other than. the
They have
picnic-
boats out there in the state,
Right, the
they
picnic
own
area
And
that
they used to
property.
and they used to have swimming there.
And swimming.
Yeah.
So they really don't do anything to the pond. They don't impact, they don't,
Well, I would
Maintenance
suspect that
road.
Whitney wants that fire pond there as a fire pond because it affects your insurance.
Certainly.
You-
sure, oh, absolutely. But they don't do anything to that pond as far as maintenance.
I don't know what, agreement they had with Black
I
Mountain.
didn't think you did,
Yeah,
so I'm not asking you for that
Yeah.
information. But I believe that someplace between the ski area and the fire station, the fire chief, the information was incorrect that they got, and they acted on that. And I think the best thing we could do is give the selectmen all the documentation, history of, previous, and say, give this to the ski area, so whoever owns the ski area understands that this has happened before. And I think that's about as far as we could go, is that's what we do for the selectmen. We're somewhat their eyes and ears. So give them the documentation, say this is the history, and this is what happened.
Right. So what I'm running into now is that because the town wasn't a party to those things, I can't find how it was resolved. I just have the public records of when the notice went out.
Yeah. But that's all you can do is whatever the best information you have.
Okay.
yeah, just say, we've looked it up, here's, Yes,
You don't have to have conclusions,
right,
just say, here it is, here's what we have.
but it's out of our jurisdiction to do any enforcement.
Certainly. But yeah, I recognize that, but it was more of like what information should we provide to the selectmen, and also when things like this come to us, this is largely a me problem, but telling people I don't know what you think that we can do, but there's not a lot, and just referring people to the state seems not as satisfying as.
Well, you have to refer them to the permitting entity. And if, and even though you may feel, Ben, as though we should do something more than that, if we have no jurisdiction, legal jurisdiction,
Certainly.
then the best that we can do is point them as an information base to the entity that has that legal jurisdiction. Because otherwise, the public starts to think that it's our job to be the legal enforcers, of which we don't have that jurisdiction. And we start to mislead the public if we try to get ourselves in that mess.
Right, which is where I don't want to be. So, and I think I brought this up before, is like, do we need to have a formal policy, and like when people bring wetlands issues before the Conservation Commission?
I think it's a case by case, Ben, and that is that, for example, when a wetland permit, the state sends it to us for our comments. If we get comments from the public, we may elect to take their comments and insert them in our comments back to the state. That's how we would play that role.
But where the
Which is what we've done with up on the old dump, that development up there. We sent our comments,
yeah.
and we may have generated them ourselves, or we may have gotten a citizen who gave us information that we didn't know that we found helpful in our comments that go back. That's the best that we can do. But we don't have a permit request from the state at this point on the wetland to the Conservation Commission to respond back to.
Yeah, I guess that gets to a kind of a chicken and egg situation, where we see an obvious case of where a wetlands permit needs to be filed. What is our obligation in that?
Well, that's where my take is we don't know whether that's true or not, because there's the legal question of how far the fire chief could go legally. And if he legally could go where he did,
But you're saying he couldn't, because he couldn't
He
increase
couldn't.
the size.
well, that's quite possible, but we don't know. And
Well, that's what you word it as, we'd like your input on this situation. DES,
Okay.
help us with this.
Yeah.
Are we, overstepping? Is it your, purview? How do we deal with it?
Because DES may come back and say, we agree with fire chief, or they may come back and say, we disagree with fire chief. They're still in non-compliance.
Well, and that's where I would feel better if I could see how this was resolved in 2016, but from what I could glean from what Burr had said is that the governor's office just came in and made it go away.
That does happen sometimes. In fact, it happens quite a bit. And if the governor did that, normally what would happen is DES would basically come back and say, you've resolved the issue, in which case it's resolved. But it's not our job to chase that through.
But the current situation is one that you can ask for guidance
From DES.
from DES.
Just say, we're confused as to who has jurisdiction here. Was it the fire chief or is it DES?
I don't know how to write that letter without it being my finger so firmly on the scale as to what I want that answer to be. Okay. Well, it'll continue to play out however it does, and I think that there are other avenues with Black Mountain. Some of the things that Penny brought up about permitting that they may or may not have achieved, I don't know. I mean, this is an amateur look at just trying to discover all of the ways to get information from the state on permitting and what is required. But it doesn't seem like the last water user of record is the previous owner of Black Mountain, so I don't think that they have a current water use permit for all of what they've been drawing.
That, I don't know whether they're grandfathered or not.
Well, John Fitzgerald had a permit, because I know
Mm-hmm.
he was, put under the gun. And he did whatever so,
But since he's no longer the legal owner of the
right,
property,
I
so-
don't know if that's taken place yet, or if this new entity is just on some kind of lease program, I don't know.
No, the new owner bought it.
They bought it.
Yeah.
Then they should have.
I don't know what the terms were, but they did.
They should have a permit in place. If it's theirs, it's theirs.
But I think what Ben is bringing up is the water withdrawal rate, of which historically the state, that may be grandfathered, the amount. I don't know the answer to that, but the state has started to develop in-stream flow regulations. But Black Mountain goes back, way back before that happened. And whether they are grandfathered, because when a lot of those laws come in, anybody who had an existing before, which I believe is the same thing as the the Wentworth Golf Course out here, it's my understanding that they may be grandfathered in the volume. Jackson Ski Touring is not, so when Jackson Ski Touring put in for snowmaking, there's some pretty rigid stipulations of when and how much water they can take as to how. The golf course, I don't believe has that. I don't believe the Eagle Mountain Golf Course has that either. And Black Mountain may be in that same category as having been grandfathered before.
And Bill Whitney wasn't making snow when he started the shovel handle.
We just don't know whether
Yeah.
they're grandfathered or not. Simple as that.
Right.
Well, I do know that their snowmaking system is grandfathered in because it would not be allowed to be built the way that it is now with an immediate diversion.
Which is probably the same as the two golf courses in town.
Yeah, so their system now, because I know this one of the former snowmakers there.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. We'll continue to monitor that. I did pick up the testing equipment, and I don't know if it was because it was a very fast handoff, but I failed to get an essential tool to calibrate the YSI. So I think Mike will have one, or if not, I will have to find something. But I'll be starting testing on the river this month, so. And my technique, I'll try a couple of doing it in the river, but in the bucket technique,
With the swirl.
it was this. It was a gentle, just
That's all you,
agitating.
that's all you should have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was operator error on my part.
Shaking it, boss.
I know. All right. Does anyone else have anything on that?
And a very crude test you can do is take some water, shake it up in a container so that it's well aerated. I don't know if you got any distilled water or something. Just where there's some air in the container, shake it up for a while because that'll get it close to 100% saturation.
To calibrate.
To calibrate. That's not an authentic calibration, but if it's coming back and telling you it's 60% saturated, you got a problem with how you're doing it with the machine.
Well, fingers crossed this season goes well. I don't have anything for easements. And no additional wetlands issues. Or community forest. New business, I did review that letter.
Yep.
That you prepared. There was a couple of typo issues.
Yeah, I noticed
that
a few, yeah.
I can adjust and
Yep.
send out, but I think
Yep.
that looked
Yep.
fine.
Ben's talking about the letter of the erosion that's happening on Reserve Brook, which is all ending up in the delta down here, including both the sediment. So it's a letter to the Forest Service asking them how they intend to proceed. But you can see the trees that are getting caught. I took some pictures and put it in that letter as well. But yeah,
Yeah, so I guess that was one of my questions in the last paragraph that you had.
this one here, or this,
Just the final paragraph. Just the unclear.
it's just asking them to address the issue.
All right.
It's on their land.
All right, well, I can edit that and send you a signed PDF. That work?
Well, you'd send it to Jim Nennis
Jim? Okay,
and to Derek, and I provided you with their email addresses.
okay. All right, I'll send that to them. They don't need a physical copy? Okay,
You can do it either way.
okay.
If you want to put it on Conservation Commission and send them a physical copy, you can do that as well.
Who are you sending it to? Which division?
It would be the Saco District because it's on Saco District, and you'd have a CC to the selectmen so that they're aware that we've asked them to address that issue. And it would be a CC to the forest supervisor.
Okay.
But you can see all the trees that are getting ready to come down. And of course, as we all know, that delta floods. And the more that builds up, the more it's gonna flood on the golf course.
Okay. Anything else? All right, our next meeting is going to be, I skipped ahead a month, so yeah, June 2nd. At 5:30, so that works for everyone? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
All right, second.
I'll second.
Come on, gang.
All in favor?
I mean, Jeff,
Aye.
All right.
And if we want tree chips, we should just contact them or have them dump it so we can move them.
Yeah, I was down there on Friday, cause I went down to meet